For letting my fiancé hand my parents the envelope that exposed my sister? My name is Natalie. I am 29, and I work as a project coordinator for a commercial renovation company, which sounds more glamorous than it is. Most of my day consists of spreadsheets, vendor delays, and pretending I am not eating trail mix for lunch in my car between site visits. I live in a small apartment outside Portland, Oregon, close enough to my parents that I cannot use distance as an excuse to skip Sunday dinners. At the time this happened, I had been with my boyfriend, Mason, for almost 4 years, and everyone in my family knew we were heading toward an engagement. Especially my younger sister, Paige. Paige is 25. She is pretty in a way that makes strangers want to help her before she even asks, and messy in a way my parents have always called sensitive. When we were kids, if Paige broke something, she cried until Mom hugged her. If I got upset about it, I was told I was older and should understand. When Paige lost my favorite sweatshirt in middle school, Mom said, she didn't mean to. When Paige dented my first car backing out of the driveway, Dad sighed and said, let's not turn this into a whole thing. In my family, Paige had feelings. I had responsibilities. As adults, the pattern got quieter, but it didn't disappear. Paige missed rent twice, and Mom called it a rough season. Paige quit jobs because her managers didn't appreciate her energy. Paige made sharp little comments at dinner, then looked wounded if anyone reacted. I learned early that defending myself only made everyone more tired of me. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were usually the same. Grocery store rotisserie chicken, bag salad poured into a glass bowl so it looked homemade, rolls warmed in foil, and my mother, Diane, asking me to help clear plates while Paige sat cross-legged in her chair scrolling through her phone. Paige has had a hard week, Mom would say. Dad, Tom, would already be halfway out the sliding door with a trash bag, or checking the grill even when nothing was on it. Conflict made him vanish into chores. Mason saw the dynamic before I admitted it. He never pushed too hard, but afterward, when we were back at my apartment and I was pretending I wasn't bothered, he would hand me a glass of water and say, you know that was unfair, right? I would shrug. It's just how they are. He hated that sentence. Mason is 31 and works for a small architecture firm. We met because one of his firm's remodel projects overlapped with one of my company's commercial jobs. We spent 3 weeks emailing about permit drawings before he finally asked if I wanted coffee instead of another PDF attachment. He is calm in a way that doesn't feel boring. Organized but not stiff. The kind of person who keeps email confirmations in folders and remembers which restaurants have good parking. He also knew I hated public attention but loved private effort, which is exactly why I trusted him. My grandmother Eileen loved him too. Grandma is 82, still wears lipstick to the grocery store, and carries tissues in her purse like she is personally responsible for the emotional stability of Oregon. She didn't say much about family drama, but she noticed everything. Sometimes, when Mom fussed over Paige for something Paige had caused, Grandma would catch my eye across the table. It was not pity. It was more like I see it. The first real sign that something was wrong happened on a Thursday night in early September. I had spent the day between a delayed flooring delivery and a superintendent who believed punctuation was optional in emails. I came home with sawdust on my shoes, ate a protein bar over the sink, and called Mason. He picked up, but his voice was different. Not cold exactly. Careful. Hey, he said. Hey. You sound like you're in a dentist's waiting room. He gave a small laugh that didn't land. Long day. I waited for him to tell me about it. He didn't. The next night he came over with Thai takeout and barely touched his pad CW. Mason was not a man who ignored noodles without a reason. Finally he said, have you talked to Grant recently? Grant was Paige's on and off boyfriend, though by then I honestly couldn't keep track of whether they were on, off, wounded, healing, complicated, or whatever word Paige was using that week. I set down my fork. Grant? No. Why? Mason looked at me like he wanted to believe the answer before I even gave it. That scared me more than anger would have. I'm just asking, he said. The last time I heard from Grant was months ago. He texted me about a camping cooler Paige borrowed from you and left in his car. I told him to bring it to my parents' house. That was it. Mason nodded too slowly. Mason. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of the takeout container. I know. You know what? He looked up. I know you. I'm just trying to understand something before I say it out loud. Nothing good ever comes after that sentence. Before I could push further, my phone started ringing. It was Mom. I let it go to voicemail, mostly because I could already feel a headache forming behind my eyes. Then she called again. And again. When I answered, she skipped hello. "Natalie, we need to talk." Mason's eyes lifted to mine. "About what?" I asked. Mom sighed the way she did when she wanted me to know I was already disappointing her. "Paige is very upset." Of course she was. "What happened?" "There is a serious situation involving Grant," she said. "And Mason. And I really need you not to get defensive." "Mom, what are you talking about?" "I'm not accusing you," she said, in the exact tone people use when they are absolutely accusing you. "But if there's even a little truth to it, you need to fix it before Mason hears from someone else." I stood up from the table so fast my chair scraped the floor. "Mason is sitting right here." Silence. Then Mom said softer, "Oh." Mason closed his eyes. I said, "What does Paige think happened?" "She doesn't think. She saw things." "What things?" "I don't want to do this over the phone." "Funny, because you were fine hinting that I crossed a line over the phone." "No one said you crossed a line." "I'm not confused, Mom. I'm being accused." Mason reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was warm. Mine was ice cold. Mom lowered her voice. "Paige is crying, Natalie." There it was. The family emergency siren. I looked at the cold noodles on the table and felt something inside me go still. "Then hand her a tissue," I said, and hung up. Mason didn't defend my mother. He didn't tell me to calm down. He just opened his phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen toward me. "I got these 3 days ago," he said. The email address was random. A string of numbers and letters attached to a free account. The subject line was, "You should know before you propose." Before you propose. My stomach dropped before I even saw the screenshots. They looked like text messages between me and Grant. My name at the top. My profile picture. Little gray and blue bubbles cropped close enough that there was no full date, only times. "Don't tell Paige. I can stop by after work." Mason doesn't need to know. There were more. Not enough to tell a full story, but enough to suggest a terrible one. My mouth went dry. "That's not me," I said. "I know you're saying that." "No." "Mason, look at me." "That is not me." "I'm looking." His voice broke a little on the last word. Not dramatically. Just enough. The awful part was that I understood why it hurt. If I had received screenshots that looked like him arranging secret meetups with Paige, I would have felt sick too, even if my brain knew better. I took his phone carefully and zoomed in. "It looks like my contact," I said. "But it doesn't sound like me." "I noticed that." "I don't say swing by." "Who says swing by under the age of 70? That got the tiniest exhale from him. Then I saw something else. The crops were weird. The top of one screenshot cut off the date line completely. Another showed only the time, not the day. The bubble with "Mason doesn't need to know" had a sliver of a message above it, but not enough to read. I handed the phone back. "Who sent this to my mom?" "Paige told your mom that Grant showed her messages," Mason said. "Your mom texted me yesterday asking if I was okay. That's when I realized your family already knew some version of this." I laughed once, sharp and ugly. "Of course they did." Mason stood and came around the table. I didn't believe it the way they wanted me to, but I hated that someone knew exactly where to aim. For a second, all the anger drained out of me and left fear behind. "They were trying to stop you from proposing," I said. He didn't answer quickly enough. My hand went to my mouth. "You were going to propose." He looked down. "Soon." I sat back down because my knees didn't feel steady. That was the first time I realized this wasn't just gossip. Someone had planned this. Someone had looked at the happiest thing coming toward me and decided to ruin it before it arrived. Mason told me I didn't have to go. Marissa, my best friend and coworker, told me not to go unless I planned to wear armor. Marissa had known me for 6 years and had watched my family turn me into the designated apology machine. She was blunt in a way that occasionally hurt my feelings and usually saved me time. "You realize this is an ambush with salad, right?" she said while we sat in her truck eating sandwiches between site visits. "I know. And you're still going?" I need to hear what Paige says. No, you want to convince people who already decided you're guilty. I didn't answer. Marissa leaned over and stole a pretzel from my lunch bag. Stop trying to win a trial where Paige gets to be judge, jury, and crying victim. I hated how accurate that was. Still I went. Paige sat at the dining table with red-rimmed eyes and a cardigan pulled around her like a blanket. She looked fragile. She also looked prepared. Mom hugged me stiffly. Thank you for coming. Sure. No one wants a fight. Then maybe no one should start one. Her lips tightened. That's exactly the tone I'm talking about. At the table, Paige barely looked at me. I never wanted to get involved, she said. I set my napkin in my lap. You involved yourself. Her chin trembled. Grant showed me messages. What was I supposed to do? Pretend I didn't see them? Show them. She blinked. What? If Grant showed you messages, show me. I deleted them, she said quickly. Looking at them made me sick. How convenient. Mom slapped her hand softly on the table. Natalie. No, Mom. She's accusing me of having an inappropriate relationship with her boyfriend. I'm allowed to ask for proof. Ex-boyfriend, Paige whispered. I stared at her. That's what you're correcting? Dad cleared his throat. Let's all take a breath. Paige sniffled once and suddenly I was on trial. Mom reached for Paige's hand. No one is attacking you, honey. I looked at Mom. She is attacking me. No one is attacking anyone, Mom said, using her polished voice. We just need you to help us understand why Paige is so hurt. I leaned back in my chair. You want me to explain Paige's feelings about something I didn't do? Mom's face hardened. This is exactly what I mean. Paige is crying and you're acting like a lawyer. That line did something to me. Not because it was new, but because it was so familiar. Paige could create a complete disaster and sob in the wreckage, and I would be criticized for checking where the trouble started. I stood. Dad looked relieved and alarmed at the same time. Nat, come on. No. My voice was calm, which surprised me. I'm not apologizing for fake screenshots, and I'm not comforting Paige because her plan made her emotional. Paige's head snapped up. My plan? Whatever this is. She pushed her chair back. I was trying to protect Mason. Sorry, that makes me the bad guy somehow. Not somehow, I said. Pretty directly. Mom gasped like I had thrown a glass. The next morning, Marissa found me in the job trailer staring at a schedule update I hadn't actually read. You look like drywall dust gained consciousness, she said. Thanks. Dinner went well? I told her everything. The deleted messages. The crying. The lawyer comment. Paige's performance at the table. Marissa listened without interrupting, which was how I knew she was furious. When I finished, she said, Okay. No more speeches. I didn't give a speech. Exactly. And it didn't matter. So stop defending yourself emotionally and start collecting facts. I rubbed my temples. From who? Paige. Grant. I grimaced. I would rather clean a parking lot. Text him anyway. So I did. I sat in my car at lunch with a bag of trail mix in my lap and typed 3 versions before sending the least embarrassing one. Me, hey Grant. This is awkward, but I need to ask about messages Paige says you showed her. Screenshots were sent to Mason that look like they came from me. I need the full text thread if you have it. He didn't answer for 4 hours. Then my phone lit up. Grant. We should talk in person. I stared at the message and said out loud, Absolutely not. Then I texted back. Me, public place. Tomorrow. 12:30. We met at a coffee shop near Beaverton with too many laptops and not enough parking. Grant looked worse than I expected. Tired, unshaven, and guilty before he even sat down. I didn't think she'd go this far, he said. No hello. No warm-up. I folded my hands around my coffee cup. Start there. He looked around like Paige might appear from behind the pastry case. A few weeks ago, Paige and I were kind of talking again, he said. Not fully back together. Just complicated. Okay. She stayed over one night. I fell asleep on the couch. I thought she was using my phone to check Instagram because hers was dead. She knew my passcode. I felt my pulse move into my throat. Grant pulled out his laptop. A couple days later, I noticed texts to you in my messages app. They weren't on my phone anymore, but my laptop had synced some of them before she deleted them. He turned the screen toward me. There it was. The full thread. Grant's number had sent me a message at 8:14 p.m. Grant, don't tell Paige. My reply, which had been cropped out of every screenshot, sat directly underneath. Me what? Why are you texting me? Grant, I can stop by after work. Me stop by where? Grant, what is this about? Grant, Mason doesn't need to know. Me, I'm showing Mason this if you don't explain yourself. Then nothing. Grant said. She deleted your replies from the screenshots. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The fake version made me look secretive. The real version made me look confused and annoyed, which was accurate. She didn't just lie about me, I said. She built a version of me people were already willing to hate. Grant looked down. I'm sorry. Did you send the screenshots to Mason? No. But I know she made a burner email. She bragged about being smarter than everybody when she had been drinking one night. My hands were shaking, so I put them under the table. Why? I asked. Grant swallowed. She was mad about the ring. Every sound in the coffee shop seemed to fade at once. Milk steaming. Cups clinking. A barista calling out an oat latte. What ring? Grant's face changed. You don't know. No. He muttered something under his breath. Damn it. Grant. She said Mason was proposing with your grandmother's old ring setting. She overheard him talking to Eileen at brunch. Paige thought it should have gone to her. I sat back slowly. Grandma's ring. I remembered it from when I was little. A delicate vintage setting with tiny side stones, kept in a soft blue box in Grandma's dresser after the center stone was removed years ago. Paige used to ask to try it on when we were kids. Grandma always said no. Not because it was expensive, but because it was special. Grant rubbed his jaw. Paige said you always get the good version of everything. Stable job, stable boyfriend, family approval. I almost laughed at the last part. Family approval, I repeated. She was spiraling, Grant said. I know that's not an excuse. It's not. I can send you the export. Screenshots too. Whatever you need. You should have told someone sooner. I know. His shame looked real. It did not make him innocent, but it made him useful. That night I showed Mason everything. I had printed the message thread because Marissa said older relatives trusted paper more than phone screens, and unfortunately she was right. The pages sat on my tiny kitchen table beside my laptop and a mug of tea I had forgotten to drink. Mason read quietly. His jaw tightened once at the line. Mason doesn't need to know. When he finished, he put both hands flat on the table and looked at me. I'm sorry, he said. You didn't make the screenshots. I hesitated. You asked questions. I still hate that you had to prove yourself. That was when I started crying. Not parking lot crying. Not silent, controlled crying. Real crying, the kind that made my face hot and embarrassing. Mason pulled me into him and held me in my kitchen, surrounded by paper evidence and unopened mail. After a while he said, There's something else. I wiped my face. Please tell me it's not worse. No, not worse. Just part of it. He reached into his bag and took out a folded receipt from a local jewelry repair shop in Portland. The shop name was printed at the top, along with the claim ticket number and dates. I was having your grandmother's ring setting resized, he said. Eileen gave me permission in July. She wanted you to have it. I didn't want you to find out like this. I touched the receipt but didn't pick it up. Mason. I know. You talked to Grandma? She cried. Then she told me the ring had been sitting in a drawer long enough. The laugh that came out of me broke in the middle. He took my hand. Paige overheard us at brunch. I didn't realize. Eileen thinks Paige was in the hallway outside the dining room. I looked at the printed messages again. It was never really about Grant. It was about the ring, the proposal, the visible proof that someone had chosen me without being pressured, begged, or guilted into it. Marissa helped me make a timeline. She brought colored tabs because she is the kind of person who owns colored tabs. Receipts, she said, tapping the stack. Full texts. Burner email if Mason can get header info. Jewelry shop timeline. And if Paige contacts you, don't argue. Document. You missed your calling as a detective. I missed my calling as your family's worst nightmare. Mason found the email header from the anonymous message and printed it. It didn't magically say Paige's name, but it showed enough technical details to connect timing and device information to what Grant had described. Mason, being Mason, had saved everything. The jewelry shop wouldn't give me his private order information when I called, which was fair. But Mason requested copies himself. The resize intake date was weeks before the fake scandal started. Proof that the proposal wasn't some reaction or cover-up. Proof that Paige had tried to stop something already in motion. Then Paige texted me privately. Paige, can we talk like sisters? No, Mom. No, Mason. Just us. I stared at that message for a long time. Every instinct I had wanted to say yes and walk in unarmed, because some stupid hopeful part of me still wanted a sister instead of an opponent. Marissa shut that down in 3 seconds. You can meet her, she said. But you record it. I don't want to trap her. You're not trapping her. You're protecting yourself from the version of the conversation she'll invent later. So I met Paige at a park near my apartment. It was late afternoon, gray sky, damp grass, kids shrieking on the playground in the distance. I put my phone in my jacket pocket with the voice memo app running before I got out of the car. Paige sat on a bench wearing leggings, a cream sweater, and the expression of someone arriving at her own memorial service. Thanks for coming, she said softly. I stayed standing. What do you want? She flinched. Wow. Okay. Paige. I just think this has gotten out of hand. That's one way to describe framing me. Her eyes sharpened, then softened again. It was almost impressive how fast she could switch. I didn't frame you. I reacted to what I saw. What did you see? Messages. From Grant's phone that you used while he was asleep? Her face changed before she could stop it. I felt a cold little click in my chest. She looked away. Grant is a liar. Maybe. But his laptop isn't. Paige wrapped her arms around herself. You always do this. Do what? Act like facts make you better than everyone. I almost smiled because it was so absurd. Facts are kind of important when you're accusing someone of betrayal. You just can't stand that Mason doubted you for 5 seconds. He didn't. You did. Her mouth twisted. Please. You don't even appreciate him. I took one slow breath. This was about the ring, wasn't it? She froze. I watched it land. I watched her realize she had not been careful enough. What ring? She said. The one you overheard Mason and Grandma talking about. Mom told me. No, she didn't. You don't know everything. Mom didn't know. Paige stood up, eyes bright now, not with tears but anger. You don't even care about Grandma's ring. You just care that he picked you. There it was. I kept my voice even. How did you know he picked me? She looked like she wanted to snatch the words out of the air and shove them back into her mouth. Natalie, she started. How did you know? I asked. Her face crumpled, but this time I didn't trust it. You were going to stand there wearing it like you earned it, she said. The playground noise seemed very far away. Earned it, I repeated. You always get rewarded for being boring and perfect, she snapped. Everyone acts like you're so stable. Like that makes you better. I'm the one who actually loves vintage jewelry. I'm the one who asked Grandma about that ring for years. So you tried to make Mason think I was crossing a line? I was trying to protect him from making a mistake. No, I said. You were trying to punish me. For once she had no immediate answer. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down and whatever mask she had left slid back into place. If you blow this up, she said quietly, you'll ruin the family. I looked at her for a long moment. No, Paige. I'll ruin the lie. I left before she could cry. The engagement party was supposed to happen that Saturday in my parents' backyard. Mason had planned it with my mom before everything exploded, which was darkly funny since Mom now believed there had been a miscommunication on both sides. Mason asked me if I wanted to cancel. I thought about it. I thought about letting Paige control the timing, the tone, the story. I thought about spending the next year under a cloud of whispered rumors, while everyone urged me to be graceful. No, I said. We're not canceling. So we plan differently. Not revenge. Not a spectacle for the sake of humiliation. A correction. Grant agreed to come, though he looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Grandma Eileen agreed too. When I asked if she was sure, she patted my hand and said, "I have been quiet for a long time, sweetheart. That is not the same as being asleep." Marissa helped us print everything in clean packets. The full text thread, cropped screenshots, Mason's anonymous email header, the jewelry shop receipt and timeline, a transcript of the voice memo, though Mason said the audio itself would matter more. For once, I told Marissa while we sorted papers on my living room floor, "I'm not going to be louder. I'm going to be clearer." She looked proud and sad at the same time. Good. Saturday came warm and bright in that early fall way Oregon does when it wants to confuse you. My parents' backyard looked almost pretty enough to pretend nothing was wrong. String lights hung along the fence. Folding tables covered with white plastic tablecloths lined the patio. Coolers full of sparkling water, beer and soda sat near the back steps. Costco desserts were stacked under a mesh cover, and Mom had arranged grocery store flowers in mason jars like she had invented rustic charm. Relatives drifted in. A few neighbors. Mason's coworkers. My parents' friends who still called me kiddo, even though I had lower back pain and a 401k. Mom hugged me when I arrived, but her eyes were already scanning behind me. "Where's Paige?" she asked. "Hello to you too." She gave me a tired look. "Natalie, please." "Not today." Dad was by the cooler, opening and closing it like inventory might save him. Paige arrived 20 minutes late in a white satin dress. Not ivory. Not cream. White. Short, glossy with thin straps and a little bow at the waist. Not technically bridal, but close enough that everyone noticed and pretended not to. Mom rushed over. "Oh honey, you look beautiful." Paige glanced at me. "I didn't think it looked bridal." "I didn't say it did," I said. Her smile flickered. My own engagement party still somehow had Paige at the center of it. For the first hour, everything moved like a play where half the cast knew the ending, and half didn't know they were on stage. Mason stayed close, steady and warm. Grandma sat under the shade with her purse on her lap, tissues ready. Grant stood near the fence holding a can of sparkling water he never drank. Marissa kept appearing beside me at exactly the moments I needed to breathe. Then Mason tapped his glass. The backyard quieted. I knew it was coming, but my heart still started pounding. Mason stood in front of me under the string lights, his face calm but his eyes bright. He said my name like it mattered. "I had a whole speech," he said, and people laughed softly. "But the truth is, Natalie knows I over-edit everything, so I'm going to keep this simple." I smiled through sudden tears. He reached into his pocket and lowered himself onto one knee. The ring caught the light before I fully understood what I was seeing. Grandma's setting, delicate and old, holding a new center stone that looked like it had always belonged there. It was beautiful but not in a flashy way. It looked like history had made room for me. When I saw it, I understood why Paige had tried so hard to stop this moment. Mason asked me to marry him. I said yes. People clapped. Someone cheered. Grandma pressed a tissue to her eyes. Mason slid the ring onto my finger, and for a few seconds, the whole world narrowed to his hands and mine. Then Paige lifted her glass. "I want to say something," she said. Mom beamed like Paige had just handed her $1 million. My stomach tightened. Paige stepped forward, eyes wet, voice soft enough to make people lean in. "I know the last few weeks have been hard," she said. "But some couples survive hard truths. Some families do too. I just hope we can all remember that trust is something you rebuild with grace." The yard went quiet in a different way. Mason's hand tightened around mine. Paige looked at me over the rim of her glass, and there it was again. That tiny blade. Mom squeezed Paige's shoulder proudly. Something in me settled. Mason kissed my temple, then turned to the guests. "Actually," he said, calm as ever, "I'd like everyone to stay for 1 minute. There is something that needs to be cleared up before we celebrate." Paige's smile held. Then Mason reached under the dessert table and picked up the envelope. Her face went completely white. For the first time in my life, Paige looked at me like crying might not save her. Mason walked to my parents and handed the envelope to Mom. "I'm not doing this to embarrass anyone," he said. I'm doing it because Natalie deserved the truth before all of you decided she was guilty. Mom's mouth opened. Mason, this isn't right, she started. You asked Natalie to explain herself, he said. Now Paige can explain this. Dad came closer, frowning. Mom pulled out the papers. I watched her eyes move over the first page, then the second. The cropped screenshots. The full thread. My confused replies that had been removed. The burner email header. The jewelry shop receipt dated before the fake scandal. This can't be right, Mom whispered. It is, I said. Paige let out a shaky laugh. Wow, you printed things? That's normal. No one laughed. I took out my phone. Paige asked me to meet privately at the park, I said. I recorded it because every time I speak to her alone, my words come back wearing a costume. Paige's eyes widened. You recorded me? Yes. That's insane. No, Marissa said from near the patio. That's smart. I pressed play. My own voice came out first, tinny but clear. This was about the ring, wasn't it? Then Paige. You don't even care about Grandma's ring. You just care that he picked you. My recorded voice asked how she knew. Then Paige's voice, sharper, uglier. You were going to stand there wearing it like you earned it. The backyard went silent. Not dramatic silent. Real silent. The kind where you can hear someone swallow. Paige's mouth trembled. That's edited. It's not, I said. It is. She's trying to make me look crazy. Grant stepped forward, his face pale. It's not edited, he said. Paige spun toward him. Don't. Grant looked miserable, but he didn't stop. She used my phone while I was asleep. She sent messages to Natalie and deleted Natalie's replies. My laptop synced the full thread. I gave it to Natalie. You're lying, Paige hissed. I should have said something sooner, Grant said. But I'm not lying now. Mom looked at Paige. Really looked. Paige, she said. Did you send those screenshots to Mason? Paige's eyes filled instantly. I can't believe you're all doing this to me. Dad, who had spent my whole 29 years stepping out of hard conversations, did not move. Did you send them? He asked. Paige looked at him, then at Mom, then at me. For once no answer came. Her silence changed the room more than any confession could have. Grandma Eileen stood slowly. She was small, but when she moved everyone watched. She came to my side and took my hand, the one with the ring. I gave Mason that setting because I wanted Natalie to have it, she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried. Not because she earned it. Because I love her. Paige started crying then, hard and loud. Grandma looked at her with sadness, not softness. Love is not a trophy, Paige. That broke whatever was left. Paige grabbed her purse from a chair. You're cruel, she said to me. You've always been cruel. You just hide it better. I didn't answer. She looked at Mom, waiting. For 29 years, I knew exactly what would happen next. Mom would follow. Dad would sigh. I would become the problem because I had made Paige feel cornered by the truth. Mom took one step. Dad caught her wrist gently. Diane, he said. Mom looked at him, shocked. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. Paige stared at them like the ground had disappeared under her feet. Then she turned and walked out through the side gate, crying loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. No one followed her. The party did not magically recover. People murmured. A few relatives avoided eye contact because they had probably believed the rumors. Mom went into the kitchen and stayed there. Dad stood by the cooler with his hands in his pockets, looking older than he had that morning. But Mason and I stayed. Grandma cut the Costco cake herself with a plastic knife and handed me the first piece. Eat, she said. Vindication is not dinner. I laughed for the first time all day. The week after the party was ugly in a quieter way. Paige sent texts to relatives saying I had ambushed her at my engagement party. She said Mason was controlling. She said Grant was bitter. She said Grandma was confused and being manipulated, which was a mistake because Grandma Eileen had more credibility in our family than any of us. The evidence had already spread far enough that Paige's usual strategy didn't work. Not completely. Grant cut contact with her. He sent me one final apology and then, as far as I know, blocked her. Mason filed a report about the burner email and harassment. He didn't expect criminal charges. He just wanted a record in case Paige escalated. Watching him sit at my kitchen table with his laptop, methodically uploading files and saving confirmations, I felt both grateful and sad. No engagement should need an evidence folder. Mom tried to push forgiveness by day 4. She called while I was in my car outside a job site, eating almonds from the center console because I had forgotten lunch again. "Natalie," she said, "I know Paige handled things badly." I stared through the windshield at a stack of drywall being unloaded. Handled things badly? She was wrong. She tried to destroy my relationship. I'm not excusing it. You kind of are. Mom exhaled. She is in a very dark place. I'm sure she is. She says she can't sleep. Neither could I. Silence. Then Mom said, "I just don't want this to tear the family apart." I closed my eyes. For once, I did not rush to make her feel better. "Mom, the family was already torn. You just didn't mind when I was the only one taking the damage." She made a soft, wounded sound. Before, that sound would have made me apologize. I didn't. Paige is not invited to the wedding unless she gives a real apology and admits exactly what she did, I said. "Natalie," she tried to interrupt. "No. Not, I'm sorry you were hurt. Not I was confused. Not Grant manipulated me. She admits she used his phone, made fake screenshots, sent them to Mason, and lied to all of you. Until then, she is not there. That puts us in a terrible position. I'm not asking you to choose between daughters. I'm telling you I'm done being the daughter who absorbs everything." Mom cried quietly. I felt bad. I also felt free. Dad came over 2 days later without Mom. That alone was strange enough that I checked the peephole twice. He stood outside my apartment holding a paper bag from a bakery I liked. "I brought lemon bars," he said. I let him in. My apartment was too small for awkward father-daughter conversations, so we sat at my kitchen table with the mail pushed to one side. He looked around like he had never really noticed where I lived. "I owe you an apology," he said. I didn't help him. He rubbed his hands together. I thought staying neutral was keeping peace. I waited. "It wasn't," he said. "It was leaving you alone." My throat tightened. He looked at the table, not at me. I should have asked better questions. I should have asked Paige directly before that party. Before dinner. Before any of it. "Yeah," I said. He nodded. "Yeah." When wedding planning started, Mason and I changed everything. Originally, my mother had imagined a bigger wedding. A ballroom, cousins I barely knew, family friends, and a seating chart that looked like a congressional map. After the engagement party, the thought of performing happiness for people who had entertained Paige's lies made my skin crawl. So we went smaller. A simple venue outside Portland with trees behind it. 40 people. No wedding party. No dramatic entrances. No Paige. Mom was invited, but she was not put in charge of anything. That was its own earthquake. She tried twice to take over flowers, once to add guests, and once to ask if there was a path for Paige to attend quietly. I said no every time. Paige never gave a real apology. She sent me one message a month before the wedding. "Paige, I hope you're happy. You got everyone." I deleted it. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. But because I finally understood that responding would only hand her another piece of me to twist. On my wedding day, Grandma Eileen wore pale blue and carried 3 packs of tissues in her purse. She walked me halfway down the aisle because I asked her to. She moved slowly, her hand tucked through my arm, and whispered, "Shoulders back, sweetheart." Halfway down, Dad joined us. That was my condition. He could walk with me, but not as if nothing had happened. Not as if he had always stood beside me. He accepted that without complaint. Before the ceremony, he had pulled me aside near the dressing room and said, "Thank you for letting me be here." I said, "Thank you for earning the sentence." He gave a small sad smile. Fair. Mom sat in the front row. She cried through most of the ceremony. I didn't know how much of it was happiness, grief, guilt, or the discomfort of not being needed. Maybe all of it. She was there, but she was not steering the day. Paige's chair did not exist. Not empty. Not reserved. Not waiting. The absence did not ruin the day. Honestly, it made room for peace. When Mason said his vows, his voice shook once and then steadied. Mine did the same. The ring on my finger caught the light again. It was Grandma's old setting holding a new stone. Not a prize, not proof that I was better, and not something I had stolen by being loved. Just a gift. At the reception, Marissa gave a toast that did not mention page, screenshots, betrayal, or envelopes. She simply said, "Natalie and Mason are the rare kind of couple who make steady look brave." I liked that. Later, when the music was low and the older guests were leaving, Grandma sat beside me with a slice of cake wrapped in a napkin for later. "You look lighter," she said. "I feel tired." "That too." I laughed. She patted my hand. "Tired can be honest." For a long time I thought being the strong one meant needing less. Less protection. Less patience. Less apology. I thought keeping peace meant swallowing the truth before anyone else had to taste it. But peace built on silence was never peace. It was just a room where everyone knew who was expected to accept the pain quietly. Proof did not magically fix my family. My mother still struggles not to soften what Paige did. My father is still learning that avoiding conflict can become its own kind of harm. Paige is still absent, and I don't know if that will ever change. What changed is that I stopped begging people to believe me before I protected myself. My sister wanted my ring, my future, and my parents' sympathy. For a while she almost got all three. But when the truth finally sat on that backyard table in black ink and white paper, there was nowhere left for her version of me to hide. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have to be louder than Paige's tears. I just had to stop covering for them. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.